Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Most importantly, welcome to night one of our primary candidate conversations. My name is Brittany Schock. I'm the Engagement and Solutions Editor here at Richland Source. Thank you, everyone, for being here in our lovely space. I have a couple housekeeping things to get through, and then we'll get started. Number one is, why are we here? Hopefully you all know. But the reason why that, Carl and I and the rest of our staff, the reason we do what we do is to keep you informed. That's our goal, is to talk about local issues. We're a hyper-local paper, and we, especially around election time, want you to be able to cast an informed vote. That's very important to us, as our role as the fourth estate and democracy. So we hope that that's our main goal as you leave tonight, is that you feel a little bit more informed and you feel a little bit more confident as you go to the ballots on May 2nd. There will be no live questions tonight, and we've talked about this. Hopefully you all know. However, we will be having a short happy hour. I've already had my happy hour. We will be having a short happy hour right in the back in our kitchen after this event. So if you like what you hear from any of the candidates tonight and you want to talk with them a little bit more about it, feel free to stick around and you can have some one-on-one time with those guys. All other election stuff that you want to learn about, highly suggest you go to richlandsource.com, obviously. But I want to give a special shout out and thank you to the North End Community Improvement Collaborative, or NECIC. They have generously sponsored all of our election coverage for 2023. And we're very grateful to them for recognizing the importance of, like we talked about, having informed votes. It's just very visionary and generous of them to do. So we're very, very grateful to NECIC. So thank you for that. I also want to plug really quickly, you might have seen these flyers as you come in. This is an event with the Richland Area Chamber. It's called How and Why to Run for Public Office. So if you, after tonight, you feel like this is something that I think I could do, that's going to be next week, and you are welcome to join that. Carl's going to be involved, so he might either encourage you or scare you off. We'll see. And with that, you want to take it away, Carl?
Sure. Thank you very much. Alomar and Cynthia, come on up. Well, good evening, everybody. Wow, that's really loud. We should have done a sound check so I know how loud I am. My name is Carl Hunnell. I'm the city editor at Richland Source. First covered politics in 1923. But happy to be here, very grateful, as Brittany said, to our friends at NECIC for sponsoring our election coverage this year, and also our event tonight, and the event tomorrow night. So be sure to come back tomorrow night. We've got the mayoral candidates will be here. We decided to split it up over 2 nights, quite frankly, because if you're like me, I have a short attention span. So the idea of keeping people extended for long periods of time, we just split it up over 2 nights. I think it'll work out pretty well. What we're going to do, we're going to talk to our candidates for 4th Ward City Council, and then we're going to bring up the candidates for Law Director, and then we'll bring up the candidates for Finance Director. Be done hour 15, something along those lines. Couple of breaks along the way. We're going to hear from our friends at the Board of Elections about a change in the voter ID laws that folks need to know about. We are live streaming tonight on our Facebook page and also our YouTube channel, courtesy of our good friends at DRM Productions. So we're very glad to have them with us tonight. And joining me right now are Alomar Davenport and Cynthia Daley, both of whom are write-in candidates in the Democratic Party primary to represent the 4th Ward on Mansfield City Council. Now, I encourage everybody to read the election preview I did on this race that we published, I think it was Tuesday afternoon. Why do I say that? Because in that story, you're going to learn a lot of biographical information about the candidates that we're not going to spend a lot of time with tonight. I will tell you right now that Alomar is the current 4th Ward councilman and is seeking a second term in office. Cynthia is a political newcomer, always glad to see folks getting involved, making her first run for public office. Now, the winner of this primary will face Republican Harold Wayman in November's general election. He is unopposed in the primary, so there will be a contested race for 4th Ward in November. So good evening to both of you. Thanks for being here. Let's jump right in. I've got the same question for both of you, and we'll kind of alternate back and forth. And we'll start out with Cynthia, this question. Why did you decide to campaign as a write-in candidate? And how have you worked to overcome the fact that neither of your names are actually going to be on the May 2nd ballot? And we'll start with you.
So I started, why I entered the race was because I saw in the newspaper that Alomar had withdrawn his petition, and I was somewhat annoyed. But talking to someone, the person suggested that I said, okay, maybe I can do it, and the person encouraged me to do it. And so I went and I did it. I went and put in my petition. The writing is gonna be hard, but what I try to do, I sent out cards in the mail with my name written on it, and hopefully, and I try to tell people at times that they will have to write in my name because it won't be there, and I still need to enforce it really, and hopefully it will be a positive result for me.
Okay, thanks, Cynthia. Alomar, same question.
Yeah. So initially, I did file my petition and had to withdraw my petition for various reasons. And at the time, I was trying to work out some things, but it was always my intention to run here in this race. I knew that I would have to run as a write-in because I withdrew that petition, and so that was always the intention to run.
Okay, thanks. Just as a reminder, folks, in order for either of these folks to advance to November, they need at least 25 write-in votes, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, 25 write-in votes. If they both get at least 25, then the winner will advance to November, and their name will appear on the ballot as the Democratic candidate for the 4th Ward. So at least 25 to move them on. So let's switch gears for a moment. Alomar, in your campaign, you've talked about the need for economic growth on the North End, also talked about it during your time on council, including now the creation of a special improvement district along Bowman Street. So let me ask you a question. What has happened or what has prevented you from working to create this district during your initial term in office? And what steps are you going to take in the next 4 years to make it happen if you get reelected? And what will that district mean for 4th Ward residents?
Yeah. So the creation of this special district is something that has been thought of and has been in the works for several years now. It would become the O.C. Hill district. The catalyst for bringing it about was NECIC's new building that is coming to the area. So what this special district will do is allow for opportunity for additional funding, specifically federal funding. There's also ways to have the community bring additional money into that district, and what we would then do is create help to remove the blight that is there along Bowman. We have a few special districts here in Mansfield already, but not to the extent of the one that we are trying to create. And its sole purpose is to bring an influx of dollars into the area to, with the NECIC building, to be able to build around the NECIC building.
Thank you. Cynthia, one of the concerns that you have cited in the campaign is the need to reduce gun violence in the community by educating and encouraging young people to acquire jobs through apprenticeship and or job training. So what specific steps do you plan to take as a member of council to make this happen?
As a member of council, initially what I'd want to do is make available or let the individuals know that it is there for them, encourage the community to talk to their young ones about apprenticeship, and the council could make funding available for them also, and such an encouragement. It's a teamwork because one organization cannot do it. The community has to be involved to encourage the young people to take up such tasks, as well as to encourage them to do skill training like at like Pioneer School or Madison, because they do have evening class for people who have already left high school. So what I'm expecting maybe council is more funding really for that.
Okay, thanks. Now, both of you have spoken about the need to clean up trash, stop illegal dumping, and reduce blight, especially in the North End. So let's explore that. I'd like to hear specific steps that both of you would take to make this happen. And how should Fourth Ward residents evaluate your success or failure in this area? And Alomar, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. There in the Fourth Ward, blight is a real issue. In my back, there's an alley in my backyard, which has suddenly become where people decide they want to throw mattresses. I end up putting them into my dump truck, and I'm waiting for, in my pickup truck, in the back of my pickup truck, and Saturday, NECIC is having a dumpster day, and those mattresses will go to that dumpster day. But the way I see it is by working with codes. We have to work with our codes and permits department to create not just policies, but enforceable policies, policies that have teeth and will curb people from doing this type of dumping. Also working with organizations like NECIC who do dumpster days, who do cleanup days to get the word out that these type of events are happening. People should evaluate this simply by the eye test. Do we have less trash, and do we have less blight in the area than 4 years from now than we do now?
All right, thanks, Alomar. Cynthia, same question for you.
So this is important to me, yes, because in my area I do see it. My property is right beside an alley, and every now and then I have to call codes and permit to come and take up stuff that's been dumped, and I've seen people drive there in their nice cars and dump there. But I remember going to New York once and with my sister-in-law, and she was telling me about the issue with the garbage there, that if you put it the wrong place, what they do is go into the garbage and find information, and they will fine you for it. Once they will fine you for whatever information they find. And that is what we need to institute here. Also, I found out from Richland Source that you have a police, it's a deputy who does policing of litter. I think we need to increase that, have more than one, and that would surely help the situation. Again, we as neighbors have to be on the lookout for people who do it. I tried tracking people down, taking picture of their license plate, but sometimes it doesn't come out good. That's another way. I've read recently that Case Western, I'm not sure which other which institution or organization, they're designing a certain camera that will help. So I think having camera at those places where you have a lot of illegal dumping will help the situation.
All right, thanks, Cynthia. Now, the former O.C. Hill Community Center. The building was a staple of the North End for various reasons for 100 years. Closed 3 years ago, now being demolished. That work's going to be done, I think, by June. And then the future of that site will be determined by the Richland County Land Bank. But what would you like to see done on this important property? And what steps will you take to make it happen? And Cynthia, you go first this time.
So I'd love to see any CIC own that property, because they do have a dream of that impact center, and I'm on the board, so I'm proud to be on the board of any CIC that's doing stuff for the North End. They have dreams, and it could be an extension to what they're designing at the Spring Mill location. Because I remember my kids actually went there, my 3 kids, and I'm proud to be a North End resident. So I think that's what they should have, extended to any CIC, and from there on, they continue their impact center.
All right, thanks, Cynthia. Alomar, same question.
Yeah, I think 2 months into my term, we had a discussion about the O.C. Hill building. And at that time, actually before I even got into office, I spoke about the O.C. Hill building, and I knew it was time to come down, simply because it was a city-owned building that the city could not afford to upkeep. And it was time for it to come down. You have to bring things down in order to bring new things up. NECIC has taken up that mantle. They've taken up that charge, and they are building a new building there in that area. But with O.C. Hill coming down is where the need for this special district comes in. Something has to go up there. Like Antoinette, I would like to see NECIC have that property. We have spoken about that property for years. They do have a vision for that entire area, but this is where a special district would be key and extremely helpful in creating a better neighborhood there, a new neighborhood there, a redevelopment of that area there.
Okay, thanks, Alomar. 2021, City Council approved spending $1.5 million to engineer and do design work for a dry dam at North Lake Park. That project is ongoing, and the design work should be done this year. That dam would remove about 106 acres of north side property from the floodplain. Now, once that design work is done, a decision's got to be made. Is the city willing to spend $18 million for the Toby Run flood mitigation project? So assuming this doesn't come up until 2024, and I don't know that it will this year, will you support the dry dam construction? And how would you recommend funding that project? And Alomar, we'll start with you this time.
Yes, yes, I would support that dam. I was very vocal in allocating that 1.5 to get the design, because once we have a ready to be built project, we could then go after different funding sources. And that was the goal of giving that 1.5 and creating this design, was for our engineering department to then go after different grants in order to fund this project. As a city right now, looking at our finances, we cannot fund this dam, and that's just reality. But by having a ready to go project, it allows us to go after different funding sources that could finance the dam. But yes, I am a very vocal supporter of the dam.
Okay, thanks, Alomar. Cynthia?
So I don't know as much as Alomar about the situation, but what I've read is that they're purchasing 2 properties that would, and it's cheaper for them to purchase a property than to build this new bridge. Now, we know what happened when flooding comes down that area with the post office and down there. So if that is gonna solve the situation, then we just have to work and support it. And in the long run, I am sure it will pay off for the community overall.
All right, kind of one final question. I'll give you both the chance to respond to this. You both have told me about the importance of public transparency and communication with residents in the 4th Ward that you would represent. So how would you, or how do you feel would be the best way for you to do that once you take office? And Cynthia, we'll start with you.
So thanks to NECIC, they have this neighbor up night. And sometimes it's not a lot of people who go there, but that is one way of reaching out to the community and maybe just improvement in going out door to door and, say, this is the best place for you to say your concerns, so that other people we can all discuss it and find solutions. And I think Neighbor Night is the best place for it right now.
Thanks. Alomar?
So the best way to do it is we have to be amongst the people. I have a Facebook group that is specifically geared towards keeping the residents of the Fourth Ward informed with what is going on in council. COVID kind of initially we were having town halls. And with COVID, that kind of shut that down. And my fault. It's my blame that we have not restarted those. But those are the ways that we stay in touch with the constituents and stay transparent. Is that we have to be amongst the constituents, being at the different meetings, like Antoinette said, to inform them of what's going on in council.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to offer each of you just take a minute and offer kind of a final thought or two that you think would support your candidacy. And Alomar or Cynthia, let's start with you, and then Alomar, you'll get the last word.
So as I am a writing candidate, and I want to encourage everyone to tell your friends about me and to remind them that they have to write in their name. My name is Cynthia Antoinette Daley, and I just want to ask for your support. And I am open to meeting people, discuss issues, and people who know me knows that I will do my work the best of my ability. And thank you for having me.
Alomar?
Democracy only works when you have options. Democracy does not work when there is one person in a race, because it takes away the choice of the people. So first off, I want to applaud Antoinette for jumping into this race. No politician, no public servant has a 100% approval rating. So those who do not approve of the job of someone should be able to voice that opinion at the polls. So it's well documented that I am in a place where I am having to be in two places at one time. This is why I am a writing candidate at this point in time. I will say that my son is the most important thing to me. That is my number one job. But I fully support Antoinette. I do believe she can do this job. I'm gonna leave it at that.
All right, well, that will wrap up the conversation with the Democratic Party candidates for Mansfield's 4th Ward on City Council. Thank you both very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Now, let's take a quick break. I think Brittany has some folks to talk with. And when we come back, we'll have the 2 Democratic Party candidates for the City of Mansfield Law Director's Office. Go ahead, Brittany.
All right. So you guys might know that we have some voter ID law changes, and I'm going to bring up Matt and Jane from the Board of Elections. They're going to talk a little bit about these changes, what that means, and maybe answer 1 or 2 questions if there's time. But Matt, thanks for being here. Take it away.
Thanks for having us, Brittany. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Matt Fempgill, the director at the Board of Elections.
I'm Jane Zimmerman, and I'm the deputy director.
So we're going to go over a couple things with House Bill 458. It's been in the news quite a bit. It has taken effect for this current election. One of the biggest changes is photo IDs. So when you come to vote, whether it's early in person or at the polls on election day, you will need either a state of Ohio driver's license, state ID, or the intern document, the paper that you get when you go get a new one or get one renewed. A U.S. passport is acceptable now, and a U.S. military card. That can be a U.S. Department of Veterans card or the National Guard card. That's the biggest change. If you don't have an ID, when you go vote, you will be able to cast a provisional ballot. But one of the other changes is you have 4 days to come to the Board of Elections with your identification for your ballot to count. So we never deny the right to vote. We always have a provisional ballot to be able to vote, and then our board members make that decision if that ballot counts. One of the other changes with House Bill 458 is mail-in voting. The deadline used to be the Saturday prior to election. It is now a week before election. So if you want to vote by mail, the deadline to do that is Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. We'll be there till 8:30 at night. So you can either get it in the mail and make sure it gets to us by then, or drive it out to the Board of Elections on Longview Avenue Tuesday night if you want to vote by mail. Another change has been the Monday before election. So we used to have early voting the Monday before election. Early voting will now end the Sunday at 5 o'clock. Part of the reason is so we have a little more time to get things prepared for Election Day. And we also have, it's pretty crazy back there on the Monday before election for anyone that's been back there. We have people picking up supplies, and we're running around trying to get poll pads updated with the last minute voters. So it gives us a little more time to prepare. They did reallocate those hours. So starting next week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you can come vote at Longview from 7:30 a.m. till 7:30 p.m. As I said, on Tuesday, April 25th, we'll be there from 7:30 a.m. till 8:30 p.m. And then Saturday, next Saturday, we'll be there from 8 to 4. And like I said, Sunday, April 30th is the last day that you can vote early in person. We will be there from 1 to 5. So that's a lot of the big changes. There is some other changes within House Bill 458, and some of that might be changed already, but that's another day. So
One of the changes is if somebody does not have a photo ID due to religious reasons, there is an affidavit they can fill out for a religious objection, and they can have that attached to their provisional ballot, and then that way they'd be able to cast their ballot. As Matt said, the biggest push we're trying to get people to know is that the absentee application by mail is the week before, because that's a big change for voters who are used to voting by mail, and also the Monday before. We want to make sure to get that out to the public, that they are not open for voting on Monday.
one thing with that religious objection, don't think that because you forgot your ID, you're going to fill that out and that's going to fly. It's not going to work. The state will check those with the BMV to make sure that you don't have an ID. So I just want to get that out there, that that's not necessarily an out to get out and not having the ID. Is there any questions regarding House Bill 458 and the changes on that? Yes, ma'am. They're still given extra time, military voters. They can request a ballot, or we can send a ballot 46 days prior to the election. So that hasn't changed. One thing on the mail ballots, they do have to be postmarked the day before election. And we have to receive them 4 days after the election. That was also kind of a big change. We used to be able to receive them within 10 days after the election. But it is now 4 days. So you either have to have it postmarked the day before the election and we have to receive it within 4 days after, or you can drive it out to the Board of Elections on election day. As long as we have it by 7:30 p.m., you can either walk it into the office or we have a drop box out back. Do not take it to your polling place because that will not count. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Thank you both for being here and giving us that very important information. I believe Matt and Jane are going to stick around a little bit after, so any other questions you're thinking about right now, hold on to them, and you guys can find them at the happy hour and ask more questions. So we're going to move on. I think Carl's here. You didn't run away. I'm so proud of you. And if we can go ahead and bring up our next candidates, that'll be great.
Thank you very much. And as Mr. Brown and Mr. Harper make their way up here, let me put in a plug for an organization that may not get a lot of attention unless something goes wrong, and thankfully it doesn't go wrong very often at all, and that's the Richland County Board of Elections. I don't know if people realize, because you hear about election issues in other counties and other states and things like that. It is a bipartisan office. The board has 2 Republicans, it has 2 Democrats, and guess what? They do things together. Shocking, isn't it? Well, anyway, Richland County Board of Elections, happy to work with those folks every year, do a great job. So thank you very much. And welcome back to the first night of Candidate Conversations here at IdeaWorks in lovely downtown Mansfield. IdeaWorks is the home of Richland Source. So if you've ever wondered, gee, where's Richland Source? We're right here in downtown Mansfield in this building. So thanks for being here, or thanks for joining us online. With us now are the 2 Democratic Party candidates to be Mansfield's next law director, Christopher Brown and Rollie Harper. Again, I encourage everybody to read the election story preview on this race. I think we published it today at 5 p.m. Like the 4th Ward race, it's got a bunch of biographical information about the candidates that we're not going to spend a lot of time here tonight. But briefly, Christopher Brown is the current deputy law director for the city, a job that he's had since 2013. Rollie Harper is a longtime local attorney who's had a criminal and a civil practice for 32 years. He also served as a magistrate in Richland County Juvenile Court. Now, the winner of this May 2nd primary, and this is important, is likely going to be the next city law director because there are no Republicans who filed in this race. So Democrats, you get to pretty much choose the next law director. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. Good to see you. Let's dive right in and start with a question for both of you. City Charter, and if you've never read the City Charter, I encourage you to go to Mansfield Codified Ordinances online. That's what I do at home when I'm sitting at home as I go into the ordinances and read them and read the Charter. It does spell out the duties of the city law director, both as a criminal prosecutor and as a civil attorney who represents the city of Mansfield. How would you kind of flesh out the job, perhaps beyond just the words written on paper? And Chris, we'll start with you.
Alrighty. So, what I always like to tell folks when I'm out on the campaign trail, they say, what does the law director do? So I'm glad that we're starting here. As Carl mentioned, we have a criminal division and a civil division. I've worked in both. The criminal division prosecutes misdemeanors and traffic cases for the city of Mansfield and the unincorporated territories of Richland County. We don't do juvenile law, and we don't do felonies. So the civil division, I always tell folks, is in-house counsel for the city. So if you think of like a corporation, you have your in-house lawyer. We advise the elected officials. We advise our finance director, our mayor, city council, prepare legislation, defend all lawsuits, and if we have to sue anybody on behalf of the city, civil division would do that. So you said flesh it out. I mean, that's kind of the core structure there, and that probably makes more sense to the average person than that old charter language. But in terms of kind of expanding that, I think that there's a couple things that we can do better. We've heard about a little bit of it tonight. I think we can do a better job with code enforcement. As one of our 4th Ward candidates pointed out, I think it's a great point. Richland County now has a dedicated officer for environmental cleanup, is what they call it. That's one big thing I'd like to do. And another thing that I think our office would be especially equipped to handle is getting folks back their driver's license, getting them valid and getting them on the road. Something we talked about last week is the critical importance of a valid driver's license in this community. We do have public transit. It could probably be a little bit better. I think that's something that we heard about as well. And so once you lose that driver's license, it's hard to go to work, it's hard to get around, and it's kind of a downward spiral. So that's something we can do. And then in the civil division, economic development. We heard a little bit about a special improvement district. Alomar, who was there at that meeting helping you with the details of what a special improvement district would look like? It was me. So I think that we can do things like that. We've heard about PACE financing at council over the last couple of months. A lot of great opportunities that I would love to see the civil division do.
Thank you very much. Rollie, same question for you. How would you kind of, when you, if you get elected, how do you kind of make the office your own? What sort of ideas do you bring to beyond just the charter words on paper?
Well, Joe, hello.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I got to get right up here, huh?
You do it.
All right. The way that I think the law director's office is conceptual in my mind is that it's somewhat reactive. What happens typically in criminal cases, something happens, the cops bring in, complaints. We take a look and see what is going to be charged, and then go ahead and do that for purposes of that. And in that regard, what I'd like to be able to do is not just deal with the reactive side of the law director's office, but be a little more proactive. We're going to do everything that the charter says that we're supposed to do, but we're going to have to get out more, I believe, and get our finger on the pulse of the community and get to people. Having lived here all my life and having been a part of this community, I've got significant and wonderful relationships with all segments of Mansfield. And getting around and talking to people and getting their opinions about what is actually going on. Anything that we want to do in terms of any kind of a specialty, anything, has to get approved by the judges. And there are going to be 2 new judges here shortly. So to have that opportunity with 2 new judges, and then to have the opportunity to get around and try to help people become more involved with the system, knowing more about the system, would be a wonderful thing.
Thank you very much. And for anybody wondering why, as Rollie mentioned, there will be 2 new municipal court judges elected this year. Why aren't they here tonight? Because there's no contested primaries for those races. We'll see you in October for the November races. But let's shift gears for a minute. Rollie, question for you. You've spoken during the campaign about your desire to make a difference in the lives of everyone, but especially local youth. Can you give me a couple of specific things that you have in mind that you would do as a law director to make that difference? And 4 years from now, if you're elected, how should they evaluate your success in this area?
Well, what I'd like to do is, and of course it's going to be totally dependent upon the new judges. Who's to say that age 18 you're an adult? That's a maturation process. And what we have is that problematic right now 18 to 26-year-old crew. And what we need to do is be able to get to them and get them bought into the system and figuring out that there's life after Mansfield in terms of growth. If we can get them to stay in the schools, get them to excel in schools so that they can figure out what they're actually meant to do here, we'll have an opportunity to get them on the road. And for those who find themselves in juvenile court and are in need of those services, we can set up a mentor program, but all of that is dependent upon the judges when they come in.
Okay, thanks, Rollie. Chris, you've talked about being ready to be the law director on day one, based upon your experience in the office that you've spent the last, 12 years working for John Spahn. Based on that experience, what specific changes would you make if you take over the office, and what has your experience shown you that really the office can do better?
Great question. So one of the complaints that I hear a lot from both citizens and our local law enforcement is that they would like to see more things down in the municipal court go to trial. So that's one easy one. So I think that we might be making too many plea deals down there. It's a very high volume court. So municipal court does about 15,000 cases a year. So that's traffic and misdemeanor. So you probably think that seems really high. We're one of the top 10% highest volume municipal courts in the state. You have to remember that 71 and 30 go through our jurisdiction. So we're getting tons of traffic cases. Another thing would be code enforcement. So I would agree, in many things we are too reactive, and I think that we can be proactive, especially when it comes to code enforcement. So something I hear a lot on the campaign trails, they would like to see us step that up. We do have to work with codes and permits. It's now called permitting and development. We've recently merged those community development and codes and permits departments. And along that line, we would really like to see an increase in hiring attorneys in the civil division, because we have a lot of opportunity in that planning and the planning and development division, but it's very intense when it comes to working through those federal regulations, the home dollars, the HUD dollars, CDBG funds. We can do a lot, but those are some of the things that I would like to do.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Another question for both of you. I'm often in the city building, and you both mentioned this, and I see a lot of people standing in the hallway outside a municipal court, waiting to meet with judges and magistrates or their probation officers. I know the courts are handled by the judges, and we're going to have new ones, but what specific changes would you make to improve the criminal prosecution of misdemeanor defendants in ways that would benefit the city and also those people standing out in the hallway waiting for their turn in court? And we'll start with you this time, Chris.
Sure. So we've kind of been touching on this. Again, it's a high volume court, so you're always going to have a lot of people in there. When you're thinking about those 15,000 cases a year, that breaks down to over 1,000 a month. I would like to see more go to trial, but I also think that, let me use a good example for getting folks back on the road. So something that I participated in and spearheaded a few years ago when I was chair of the Ohio State Bar Association Young Lawyer Section was something that we called a valid clinic. And what we did was we worked with a bunch of partners, including the BMV, the local clerks of court, and local judges. We did this across the state. Unfortunately, we were not able to bring it to Richland County yet, but I would like to. We brought in we brought in the county children's services, jobs and family services, if folks had unpaid child support, and we worked with people to come up with a collaborative solution to get them back on the road. So that would be another thing that we could do to bring people in, have one of these clinics maybe once a year, clear out some of that congestion, because the problem is if you take someone's driver's license away, I can tell you that unfortunately they do not quit driving. So then they get another charge, and they're back down there waiting, like you talked about, when they don't have to be. You know, if you're talking about the congestion of the physical layout, that's probably a question for council or the mayor, because that has to do with building facilities, not the law director's office. I mean, I can tell you from my experience in the office, if you could give us more space, we would love it. But that's a budgetary concern. We'd love to have more prosecutors as well. That also would clear out some of that. But again, going back to, it's a high volume court, and you're always going to have a lot of folks down there. That becomes a budgetary issue. I'm sure if you talk to the municipal court judges right now, we have 2 magistrates. There's been a lot of complaints about, if you talk to the county, do we need 1 magistrate or do we need 2? Maybe some folks would feel that we need even more if we're in that top 10% of highest volume across the state. So those are a couple things.
Thanks, Chris. Rollie, same question for you. How can we better improve the criminal prosecution of misdemeanors?
Good question. The more trials you have, the longer and the slower the system will respond. And the other side of that coin is you don't want to give away the farm every day in order to keep the train running. So what typically I see happening is when you start doing more trials, people are going to get the word, and they're going to want to, and they're going to want to get this thing taken care of quickly, and you're not going to have to give away the farm in terms of deals to get people to plea so that you can deal with the big caseload that's coming through. And that's kind of what's been happening now. You're going to have to do more trials, and that's going to take seasoned trial attorneys. And I've been one of those for 32 years.
Thanks, Rollie. Gentlemen, one of the most visible roles for the law director is attendance at city council meetings. I'd like both of you to take a moment and share with us your perception of the law director's role at these meetings. Now, in cities that I've been around over the years, I've seen it lots of different ways, including Mansfield. I've seen city attorneys who merely speak when spoken to. I've seen city attorneys who put themselves into the conversation as the meeting goes along. So how would you handle this task? And Rollie, I'll let you go first this time.
First, frankly, prior to the very first one, I'd get around to all of them and say, you know, I'm not going to necessarily be interested in guiding the train. If you have any questions, come to me. You know, and if you have any questions on the council floor, I'll certainly respond to those. What you want me to do is, because I think what we're supposed to do is be of service to them. When they have legal questions, we'll answer them. When they have issues of concern that need researched, we'll research them. But to take the initiative and go further, I think we're supposed to be somewhat reactive in that regard.
Okay, thanks. Chris?
Yeah, I think I would continue. I mean, you've seen me in action for how many years now? I think I would continue to operate in very much the same way. As you know, it depends on the council meeting. Some council meetings, there are a lot of questions for the law director's office. It could be a matter of substantive procedure. You know, do we need to go into executive session? I know that's a favorite of yours.
No, you do not need to go into executive session, ever.
And so, you know, we could have questions like that. Sometimes it's a matter of claims, right? At claims, the law director's office is typically leading the conversation on that. I've been working with Councilwoman Zader on that. And so when the claim comes in, they rely on the law director's office to say, do we have liability in this particular instance? If we do, the law director's office is going to advise them to consider settlement on the particular claim. So I think I would continue to operate in the manner that I have for several years, which is to say, try to be of service whenever they ask for help. But if there is a moment where I feel that I need to interject myself, and that does happen from time to time, they will start to go down a path that is maybe not legally or factually correct. Absolutely, I'm ready to interject and get them back on course.
Thank you. I have one final question for both of you. What should the law director's role be when the city administration feels outside counsel needs to be hired for a specific case or a task, such as labor negotiation or a civil lawsuit? Should the law director help make the decision whether to pay for outside legal counsel? How rare would that be if you were elected law director? And Chris, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I think the first part of the question is, should the law director be involved in the conversation with counsel about making that decision to hire?
Yes.
So to me, the answer is absolutely yes. And typically we have been. I would say it's very rare where city council or the mayor or some other member of the administration has gone out and hired outside counsel without our consultation. I think something that is really important for people to understand is we have insurance just like anybody else. And so when we get sued, we're not playing with the house money. We're playing with insurance dollars. So we really don't have any other option other for them to say our lawyer is going to be involved. And that's what you see a lot of times. So right now you've probably seen we had someone who had a bad interaction with the fire department and the city was sued, and we have outside counsel for that. That's because the insurance is saying we're going to be the ones paying that out, not the city's general fund. When it comes to things like labor negotiations, yes, in the past 12 years, the law director's office has not been part of that, but I absolutely would like to be part of that moving forward. And the reason why I think I'd do a fantastic job in doing that is because of the great relationship I have, not only with local unions around town, but specifically with our AFSCME union, with our police union, and with our fire union. With all due respect to the current administration, I say this time and again, there is a major breakdown at the negotiating table with our unions and our current city administration. And I always tell people it's very hard to sit down and negotiate in good faith with them when you don't feel like there is a baseline of respect. So again, I feel very strongly, and I'm very proud to have those labor endorsements. I absolutely would be at that negotiating table moving forward. And again, when it comes to something like where our insurance is going to come in, the law director's office can only do so much.
Thanks, Chris. Rollie, same question.
That's an accurate answer. There is a time and a place to get involved. There's a limited opportunity to get involved. When it becomes problematic because of insurance companies saying wrong, that's what you're going to do. And it's as simple as that. And I would agree with his answer. Beyond the insurance company saying no, you must get involved.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to offer each of you take just a minute or two and offer a final thought that you think would support your candidacy. And Rollie, we'll start with you.
For that minute or two. I've been a resident of Mansfield all my life. I've had 32 years of experience. I've had the privilege of being impactful in the community. And now I'd like to do that on a grand scale. Having been at juvenile court for 9 years as a magistrate, having been a part of Civil Service Commission, having been a part of and helping to found and still at the kinship program that Richland County Children's Services created for purposes of diverting children that would otherwise find themselves in foster care. We still divert them to relative placements. Been doing that for probably 25 years. And now it's so big, and it's also nationally recognized that they actually hired a second attorney to be a part of that. Melissa Tamalio is a part of that with me now. In the CASA program, I was a CASA volunteer in Toledo. CASA is a court-appointed special advocate / volunteer guardian ad litem. Getting people involved in the community, and I brought that program here and had it initiated through Judge Spahn over at juvenile court. But getting people involved and getting in the community is what we need more of, and those are the kinds of things.
Thanks, Rollie. Chris, you get the last word on that.
Great. All right, so let's say that you went out and tore your ACL. Not fun. All right. Would you rather have a brain surgeon who's been doing brain surgery for 32 years, or would you rather have someone who is nationally recognized for working on ACLs and has been doing it day in and day out for the last 12 years? Which doctor are you going to pick to work on your knee? So that's kind of what we have here. I hear a lot of things about guardian ad litems, about juvenile law, being a juvenile court magistrate. I've been working in the law director's office full-time since 2011. I started there as an intern in 2007, and it's my passion. This is the first political office that I have ran for. People at the party asked me to run for state rep, to run for prosecutor, and I always told them, I want to run for law director. I think I'm going to be a great candidate for this position. I know the job inside and out, and I'll be 100% ready to go on day one. There is not a question that city council or our new mayor or our new finance director can throw at me that I will not be able to tackle on day one. I've been recognized by the American Bar Association as being an up-and-comer in state and local government law. I chaired the ABA Young Lawyers Division. We have over 100,000 members nationwide. That was an elected position. Currently sit on the OSBA Board of Governors, where I chair our Government Affairs Committee. I am the best qualified candidate for this position, and I would greatly appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay. That will wrap up our conversation with the Democratic Party candidates for Mansfield Law Director. Rollie, Chris, thank you both much for coming in. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk with the two Republican Party candidates for the City of Mansfield Finance Director. Thank you.
We're going to come back in about 5 minutes, so don't go too far. 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. Please return to your seats.
Okay, ready to get started again with our last group of the night? The faster we get started, the quicker we can all go to happy hour. Except for Brittany, she's been in happy hour mode already, but that's okay. Yeah, or hoppy hour.
Kelly's at hoppy hour.
All right, well, welcome back again to the first night of Candidate Conversations here at IdeaWorks in downtown Mansfield. Again, thanks for being with us. Joining us now are the two Republican Party candidates to be Mansfield's next finance director, Kelly Blankenship and Mark Abrams. Again, I encourage everybody to read the election story preview. Our managing editor, Larry Phillips, told me it just posted. So if you'd like to go to the website now, you can read all about it, because we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on biographical stuff here. All right. Briefly, Kelly Blankenship is the executive director of Wayfinders Ohio, the homeless shelter in Mansfield, formerly known as the Harmony House. She did serve a term as the city's finance director from 2007 to 2011. Mark has worked for the city for the last 28 years in a variety of capacities, currently the superintendent of the city's Parks and Recreation Department. Now, the winner of this primary will face Democrat John Van Harlingen in November's general election. Former city councilman John is unopposed in the May primary, so we will have a contested race in November. Kelly and Mark, thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Let's dive right in, and we'll start with a question for both of you. Again, I love spending time reading city charters. The charter spells out the role of the finance director as effectively the chief fiscal officer of the city. If elected, how would you flesh out the position? You've both seen how the office has operated for the last 12 years. What would you change? And Mark, let's start with you.
I think for the last 12 years, finance office has ran fairly smooth. Some of the things.
Put that right to your mouth.
Oh,
So
sorry.
everybody can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Yep. If your daughter can't hear you, she's going to yell at me. So
Well, yeah,
go
I
ahead.
know. No, the office has ran pretty smooth for the last 12 years. Some of the things that need to be changed are just things from the department head standpoint. There needs to be a better process of approving POs so that we can be quicker and getting our POs approved and get the jobs done that we need to do. One of the things that we probably really should look at with the new administration is changing how Border Control's done. As it is now, it's the mayor and the safety director and the finance director, and so if the finance director doesn't necessarily agree with what's going on, it's kind of a waste of time to even go to the meeting, to be quite honest. So those are some of the things that I'd like to look at changing.
All right, thanks. Kelly, same question for you.
Okay, well, to address the beginning of your question, to flesh out the office, the finance director has a vast area of responsibility. The finance director is responsible for estimating the revenue for the entire city budget. It's over $100 million budget. And the budget is based upon the estimated revenue provided directly by the finance director. So she or he has to have knowledge of where all of those revenue resources are, looking at trends moving forward and looking at what has happened in the past. So you've got to be able to analyze financial information. The finance director is also responsible for reporting every financial transaction that happens in the city, and not just reporting that in an accounting standpoint, but from a fund accounting standpoint. So if any of you have some accounting knowledge, then you need to know that governmental accounting is vastly different from public accounting. And it's a lot more detailed, it's a lot more involved, but it really tells a clear picture of how the funding is being spent, which is important when you're spending public dollars. Everyone needs to know that those dollars are being spent appropriately in the areas that they're reserved for. The finance director is also responsible for income tax and receiving and recording all of the income tax for people who work for or work in or live in the city of Mansfield, because the general fund is funded by taxpayer dollars, largely withholding, like where you go to work and then you pay your taxes. That's what's funding your city operations largely. And they're also responsible for tracking the fixed assets for all of the city departments and purchasing and payroll for every city employee. So the responsibilities are vast. Over the last 12 years, since I have not been there, one of the things I did notice in reviewing the CAFR and the budget is that, there were many funds have been created in the last 12 years that I think probably could have been addressed by using a cash code instead of creating a brand new fund, because once you have a fund created, it's hard to get that fund to go away out of the budget. And so I would like to look at ways to reduce that number to make the budget a little easier to read for people to understand. And then another thing that I'm concerned about is the city's debt position right now. We have a lot of debt load, a very heavy debt load, and there are debt issues that when I was in office were refinanced again. And so I think that is a practice that needs to be reviewed and mitigated if possible.
Thank you. Let's shift gears for a minute. Kelly, the city of Mansfield is 9 years removed from a state-ordered fiscal emergency that began in 2010, ended in 2014. It ended after a series of cost-cutting moves, including layoffs and revenue enhancement steps. As the finance director from 07 to 11, you cautioned the administration and the council about fiscal danger signs. Looking back with hindsight being 2020, what would you have done differently at that time? And what will you do if elected if those same flashing lights begin to appear?
What would I do differently? I think I would have worked harder to build my relationship with those elected officials who had the power to change the course. I was new, I was young, and I wasn't well known by people. I mean, people knew me from around the city because I've worked there for many years before I was finance director, but I did not have the reputation of knowing what she's talking about. So I wasn't taken very seriously, even though I kept saying the same message over and over. Going forward, one of the reasons I'm excited about running is because now that the city is on a better financial footing and we've got all of this new growth in Mansfield area, I'm hoping that, we have this opportunity to put together a cohesive team of brand new officials in place who all are community focused and not just my little silo of this is my elected office and my responsibilities, but a team that can actually work together. Like Attorney Brown said that, he wants to be involved in negotiations for unions. I think the finance director also should be involved in those negotiations because contracts come out and then it's up to the finance director to say, well, we're not going to be able to fund this in 3 years at this level. So those things are all important when you need a team working cohesively together, everyone with the same goal.
Thank you. Mark, city charter. Again, I was reading the city charter at lunchtime today. It has no formal education requirements for somebody to become finance director. It leaves that decision in the hands of the voters to determine readiness for the office. Now, without formal education in finance, what experiences in your 28 years of work with the city have prepared you to become the fiscal officer for the city of Mansfield?
I'm glad you asked that question. No, for the 28 years I've been with the city, I've done various jobs throughout the city, different positions. One that I'm most proud of, I was elected ASME Local 38 union president during fiscal emergency. So during that time, we spent a lot of time working with the finance office, with the administration on trying to come up with ways that we all could agree to save money that wasn't going to cost us jobs. But unfortunately, that didn't work out so well. Fast forward, I'm now a department head. A department head deals with payroll, purchase orders, pretty much, acquiring things for the city, asset management, all the stuff that Ms. Blankenship talked about within the finance role.
All right, shifting again, a question for both of you. City charter says the finance director, quote, shall assist the mayor in preparation of the yearly budget. So what will your assistance in that process look like if you're elected? And we'll start the double question this time with you, Kelly.
Assisting the mayor with the budget essentially is advising on this is the level of revenue that we expect to receive for the coming year, and these are the absolute must-have. It's the finance director's responsibility to kind of pre-populate that budget with what is known and is already expected, that these are contractual obligations that we cannot get out of, and then to work with the mayor on the balance of that to spread out the rest of the funds where they can best be used and where we can keep city services at the level that the citizens expect.
Mark?
I think the key word in that phrase is advise. It's the mayor's budget. It always has been the mayor's budget. What you can do as finance director is that you can strongly suggest, and it's something that we haven't done in a while, is that we balance to revenues. That's very important that we balance to revenues. So any carryovers that we can have, we can start using for capital improvement the following year.
Thanks, Mark. Now, during the campaign, you've both talked about the need for greater public transparency regarding city revenue and expenses. So what specific steps will either of you take to make that happen? And Mark, you go first this time.
I think there's been steps that have been taken, but we need to take them a little bit further. We have the open checkbook portal now for the city of Mansfield where people can go look up how we spend our money and what departments spend their money on and where it goes. I think maybe it should be something maybe we go to as finance directors, whether it's Kelly or myself, go around to neighborhood watches and explain to people how to use that and access that and explain how it works. That way they have the ability to go on when they're sitting in their living room and they want to know how much the park spent on gas last week. They can look that up. So I think if we go out and use the tools that are in place, but we communicate better with the public, I think we can achieve that transparency.
Kelly?
When I was finance director before, I made that also one of my priorities at that time was to help especially city council members understand city finance because it is so nuanced. So one of the things that I did was publish on the website my quarterly reports that I gave to city council. And I spent a lot of time working one-on-one with those people to make sure that they understood where the money comes from, how it's being used. What I would do again in the future, I mean, like I like to think I'm a relatively intelligent person, but when I got on the portal to see the city's checkbook, it's not very user-friendly. It really is kind of a difficult site to use. I prefer to read a report and have things spelled out for me, and those things no longer exist, so I would reinstitute putting a written report out there in the people's language that's easy for everybody to understand, that is published on the website, accessible to everyone. And I also agree with what Mark said, is that the finance director needs to be more visible in the public, not just knowing what is within the realm of the finance director, but citywide, knowing what's going on in the community and being out there to represent the office and being able to represent all of the citizens back to the administration.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I would like to offer each of you, take just a minute or two and offer a final thought or two that you think would support your candidacy for finance director. And Kelly, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. I think even though the charter is silent on qualifications for a finance director, because of the level of responsibility and because of the knowledge that you have to have in order to be effective in that position, it is important to have someone who has the right education and who also has the right experience. You know, we're in an economy right now where globally, or nationally, we're in a recession, and eventually that's going to shake down to the city level. And it's important to have someone in office who has the right education, who has the right experience and the knowledge to be able to take that information and look forward and see how that's going to affect our city and be able to mitigate that ahead of time. So I appreciate your...
Mark?
Winston Churchill said, "Those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it." I think it's time to move on in a different direction. I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm a fiscal conservative. I've been with the city for 28 years. I understand how the city works. I will show up every day to work. I will work my hardest. I will represent the people to the best of my abilities. And a vote for me will be a vote for the people. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. That will wrap up our conversation with the Republican Party candidates for Mansfield Law Director. Before I bring Brittany back out to kind of wrap us up and shoot us all into happy hour, I've had the privilege of covering politics in local communities for, goodness, going on 40 years. And let me tell you, I don't care what town you're in, when you have people willing to put themselves out to run for an elected office, God bless them. Because I've been in towns where you look around and nobody wants to run for an office, and that's problematic because then nobody wants to do it. So I have the utmost respect for everybody that was up here with me tonight, the same we will have tomorrow night with the mayoral candidates. So get out and vote on Election Day. The only person that loses on Election Day is you if you don't go out on May 2nd, or even in advance, because Matt's got the place open night and day. Vote in advance. And with that, thank you all very much for coming, for listening to everybody, and I'll turn it over to Brittany.
Well, I don't have much left to say, but Carl is making me do this, so. Like Carl said, we're wrapping up these conversations. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow at 7 o'clock again, that's when we're talking to the mayoral candidates. Again, we're only talking to the candidates who are in a contested primary race. So that's why these specific candidates are talking to us tomorrow. We'll be on live stream again. Thanks for joining us at home. Hello, Mom. Check out richlandsource.com for all of our election coverage all across the county, not just in Mansfield. Big hand to Carl for hosting, right? And most of our election coverage in Mansfield was penned by dear Carl Hunnell, so you can take it up with him. No. And like Carl said, most importantly, vote. That's why we're here tonight. Like I said, this is to help you cast an informed vote. And please go do that. Please go participate in democracy. It's a blessed thing that we get to do, and we shouldn't take it for granted, and we should actually do it. Go vote. See you all tomorrow night. And with that, let's go to happy hour.